Time in the West is an anthology of every Western movie you've ever seen, remixed in a rather cynical way. It's a kind of funeral dirge for the American Western, and I think it's the best Western ever made.
People like that have something inside. Something to do with death.
Sergio Leone had made 3 westerns which had been very successful globally, sort of Mediterranean spaghetti westerns with a very Italian flavour. And he wanted to say goodbye to that world by making a Hollywood western. So he got together in early 1967 with 2 young intellectuals, Dario Argento, who was then a film critic, and Bernardo Bertolucci, who'd made 2 small features. And they simply watched westerns non-stop at Leone's villa in Rome and wrote this very long treatment of about 300 pages. He went to Paramount, who gave him carte blanche, a sort of blank cheque basically, to redo the success of his previous 3 movies. Sergio Leone had wanted Henry Fonda to be his actor ever since he made A Fistful of Dollars. In fact, Fonda was his first choice as the man with no name, the Clint Eastwood part. At last he had an opportunity here to get Henry Fonda, not as the goody, not playing the lone avenger, but as the psychopathic baddie employed by the railroad company. Fonda got an eye specialist to make him some brown contact lenses, and he got his eyebrows darkened, and he grew a long moustache so he looked like John Wilkes Booth, the man that shot Abraham Lincoln. And that's what baddies look like, you know. He arrives at Fiumicino Airport in Rome. Leone takes one look at him and said, no, 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 shave. I want the blue eyes. I want the clean-shaven Henry Fonda. And in that scene at the beginning, Fonda's first appearance, this man appears from behind the bushes in a long leather coat of dust and squawking sage hens on the soundtrack. And the camera's behind him, and as the camera comes round, you see Henry Fonda's face. And Leone said, I want everyone in the audience at that moment to say, Jesus Christ, it's Henry Fonda. You get this sort of total immersion in the Hollywood Western, and you add that to Leone's total visual recall of moments in Hollywood Westerns that he remembered absolutely photographically. He could remember every frame. If you take the beginning of the movie, here's 3 gunfighters waiting at the station, Cattle Corner Station, for the noon train, which of course is 2 hours late. We are in Italy after all. And it is a remake of High Noon. I mean, a lot of the shots are actually identical as the 3 gunslingers are choreographed to sit with the railway line going off into infinity. That's the starting point. So the audience sort of recognise, oh yeah, I think I recognise this. It's like High Noon, but what the hell's going to happen? So what would 3 gunfighters be doing waiting at the station, passing the time? He stretches that thought. So one of them has a fly buzzing round him, which irritates the hell out of him, and one of them does this awful pulling on his knuckles, and the other one standing there with water dripping on his bald head, and you just get this sense of the incredible sort of boredom of waiting for this train which is late. We go from the High Noon opening of Once Upon a Time in the West to a little boy rushing round the Spanish desert. And it's identical to the opening moments of Shane, where you get this little boy with a toy wooden rifle, sort of stalking a deer. We look up, the deer's antlers frame Shane coming from out of the wilderness in his white fringed buckskin. The hero arrives. All is well. We go off to a happy future. Well, it ain't like that in Leone's vision. Once Upon a Time in the West was the first rock video, in effect, because it was the first time, I think, anybody had made a feature film where the entire thing is choreographed around a pre-existing score. Leone went to talk to Morricone, his composer, told him the story, and Morricone went off and wrote the key themes. The Charles Bronson theme, bong, 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 every time he comes on. and the Jason Robards theme, which is a sort of lilting, cliched electric piano, sort of ye olde Wild West theme. So like a Wagnerian opera, each character gets their theme. All those were written in advance, and as they were shooting the movie, they actually played on an open-reel tape recorder on the set, so people walked to the music, and there was complete choreography. In fact, there's a moment in it which I think is quite stupendous, where Jill, played by Claudia Cardinali, arrives at Flagstone Station, and in one shot, the camera watches her walk along the platform, chat to the station master, and then up on the crane over the roof of the station, and you see the town of Flagstone beyond as the music comes to a crescendo, and the timing of the crane was absolutely gauged on the crescendo which Morricone had written. I think it's a fabulous junction of music and image. It's like a puppet show or a piece of theatre. You've got these actors sort of strutting around to the music, and it gives it a very distinctive atmosphere. The duel takes on much more significance in Italian westerns. Duels tended to be thrown away much more in Hollywood films. The traditional gunfight in Hollywood westerns is linear, in the sense that you've got Goody at one end of the main street, like in High Noon, and baddies walking down the street. Leone was much more interested in circles than lines. One character comes forward, choreographed to the music, every second of it. Another character comes forward. We get a close-up of one, a close-up of the other. They then walk round each other like sort of two dogs waiting to have a scrap. It's like a dance. It's like a sort of military two-step. This is the moment where you settle what's on your mind. And forget about all the rest, forget about the plot, forget about the story. You've got the two gladiators in the arena. They stand there in absolute silence, facing each other. When the movie came out, it was the fact that it didn't look like or feel like a spaghetti western that confused everybody. And at the time, it was rather buried. Then it started getting shown in the late 60s on film courses in the States as an example of editing, use of music and so on. And the so-called movie brat generation, I believe, were profoundly influenced by Once Upon a Time in the West. George Lucas spoke to Leone about the way he got music and image together when he was cutting Star Wars #3. So its impact in film culture was huge, and it now appears in people's lists of the 10 best westerns of all time, which is remarkable when you look at the reviews in the 60s, because they basically tried to bury it. I agree with them. I mean, actually, I've been saying it's a great movie ever since 1968, but everyone thought I was daft.